June 11th, 1955. Le Mans, France, 6:26 in the evening. A race car traveling at 150 miles per hour struck the back of a slower car, launched into the air, somersaulted over an earthen embankment, and disintegrated into a packed crowd of spectators. The bonnet separated from the car and cut through the crowd like a guillotine. The engine block broke free and hurtled 100 meters into the stands. The fuel tank ruptured and ignited, and because the car's body was made from a magnesium alloy, when fire marshals aimed their water extinguishers at the blaze, the flames didn't die. They intensified. 83 people died that evening. Over 120 were injured. The driver was killed instantly, and the race didn't stop. This is the story of the 1955 Le Mans disaster, the deadliest accident in the history of motorsport, the chain of decisions that caused it, and the way it permanently changed every racetrack, every race car, and every safety regulation in the sport we watch today. To understand what happened on June 11th, 1955, you need to understand what Le Mans was in 1955. And you need to understand how completely the sport had failed to keep pace with the cars it was asking drivers to race. The Circuit de la Sarthe, the Le Mans track, had first hosted a race in 1923. In 1923, the fastest cars on the circuit were traveling at roughly 60 miles per hour. The infrastructure built around the circuit, the pit lane, the spectator areas, the barriers between the crowd and the track had been designed for cars traveling at 60 miles per hour. By 1955, the leading cars were exceeding 170 miles per hour on the Mulsanne Straight. Nearly 3 times the speed the circuit had been designed to handle. The earthen embankment separating the spectators from the pit, straight the barrier that stood between 250,000 people and the cars racing past them, was 4 feet high. A low mound of packed dirt, unchanged since 1923, now serving as the only protection for a crowd, watching machines traveling at speeds its designers had never imagined. Nobody had stopped to ask whether 4 feet of dirt was enough to stop a 900-kilogram racing car at 150 miles per hour. The answer, as the world discovered on the evening of June 11th, was no. The 1955 Le Mans field was extraordinary by any measure. Mercedes-Benz had entered their new 300 SLR, arguably the most advanced sports racing car in the world. Their driver lineup was historic. Juan Manuel Fangio, widely considered the greatest racing driver alive, partnered with the young Sterling Moss. Jaguar had entered their D-Type with the newly developed disc brake system, a technology so advanced that Jaguar's cars could stop significantly faster than any other car on the circuit. Ferrari, Aston Martin, and Maserati completed a starting grid that was, in terms of pure talent and machinery, as competitive as Le Mans had ever seen. Among the Mercedes entries was a 49-year-old Frenchman named Pierre Levegh. His inclusion had been partly a sporting decision and partly a diplomatic one. 3 years earlier, in 1952, Levegh had attempted something that had never been done before or since he drove the entire 24 hours of Le Mans solo without handing over to a co-driver. For 23 hours, he led the race alone. In the final hour, exhausted beyond any reasonable limit, he missed a gear change. The engine failed. A race he had led for almost its entire duration slipped from his hands in the last 60 minutes. Mercedes, who had won that 1952 race as a result of Levegh's mechanical failure, invited him onto the team in 1955. His knowledge of the circuit was considered valuable. His presence, as a celebrated French driver racing for a German manufacturer just 10 years after the war, was diplomatically significant. He was sharing the third Mercedes entry with an American driver named John Fitch. The race started at 4 p.m. on Saturday afternoon. For the first 2 hours, it unfolded exactly as expected. Fangio and Moss in the lead Mercedes trading positions, with Hawthorne's Jaguar at the front of the field. The pace extraordinary, lap records being broken repeatedly. The crowd was enormous. Estimates suggest 250,000 people attended one of the largest sporting crowds in France that year. At 6:20 p.m., lap 35, the first scheduled pit stops were due. Mike Hawthorne, leading the race in his Jaguar, received the signal from his pit crew to come in for fuel. He passed Lance Macklin's slower Austin Healey and began to slow for his pit stop. The Jaguar's disc brakes, significantly more powerful than the drum brakes fitted to most other cars on the circuit, slowed the car far faster than anyone following could anticipate. Macklin, directly behind Hawthorne, hit his own brakes hard. His Austin Healey, fitted with conventional drum brakes, couldn't match the Jaguar's stopping power. To avoid hitting Hawthorne, Macklin swerved left toward the center of the track. Directly behind Macklin, traveling at approximately 150 miles per hour, was Pierre Levegh in his Mercedes 300 SLR. Levegh had perhaps 1 second, possibly less, to react to Macklin's swerving car filling his line of sight. He raised his hand, a warning to Fangio, who was following behind him. Fangio, one of the most gifted reactive drivers in the history of the sport, somehow saw the hand signal through the smoke and debris and steered around the unfolding catastrophe. His windscreen cracked from the heat of the explosion as he passed. Levegh did not have Fangio's margin. His car struck the rear of Macklin's Austin Healey at speed. The aerodynamic shape of the Austin Healey's rear, long and ramp-like, acted as a launch ramp. Levegh's Mercedes became airborne. What happened next took approximately 2 seconds. It has been studied, discussed, and documented for 70 years, and it remains the most catastrophic sequence of events in the history of motorsport. The Mercedes 300 SLR left the track traveling at high speed, cleared the low earthen embankment, and disintegrated on impact with the spectator area. The car's body, constructed from electron, a magnesium alloy chosen for its lightweight, did not simply break apart. It combusted. Magnesium burns at over 3,000 degrees Celsius and cannot be extinguished with water. When fire marshals arrived and aimed their hoses at the burning wreckage, the flames erupted more violently. The bonnet separated from the car at the moment of impact and traveled horizontally through the packed spectator area. The engine block, one of the heaviest single components in the car, broke free of its mounts and hurtled into the crowd for almost 100 meters. The front suspension assembly followed. Spectators who had climbed onto trestle tables for a better view of the pit straight found themselves directly in the path of the debris. Pierre Levegh was thrown from the car. He died instantly. John Fitch, his co-driver, had been standing in the Mercedes pit, suited up, ready to take over the car at the upcoming stop. He was standing next to Levegh's wife, Denise. Both of them watched it happen. Levegh's body lay on the pavement in full view until a gendarme pulled down a banner to cover it. Half an hour passed. Fitch made his way to the media center to telephone his family to tell them he was not the driver of the crashed car. Walking through the media center, he overheard a reporter filing copy. 48 deaths already confirmed. 48. In half an hour. Fitch went back to the Mercedes pit and told the team management what he had heard. He argued, with increasing urgency, that Mercedes had to withdraw from the race. Not just on moral grounds, though the moral argument was overwhelming. On practical grounds. It was 1955. The war had ended 10 years earlier. A German manufacturer competing in France, continuing to race while French spectators lay dead around the wreckage of a German car. The public relations consequences would be catastrophic, regardless of what happened on track. Mercedes team manager Alfred Neubauer went to the Jaguar pit. He asked whether Jaguar would withdraw their cars in acknowledgement of the disaster unfolding at the other end of the pit straight. Jaguar team manager Lofty England said no. Hawthorne and the Jaguar team kept racing. Mercedes eventually withdrew their remaining cars in the early hours of Sunday morning. With Mercedes out and Ferrari's cars already retired with mechanical problems, Hawthorne's Jaguar crossed the finish line first 5 laps clear of the field. He was photographed on the podium, smiling, drinking champagne. A French magazine published the photograph with a caption that translates roughly as, "Cheers, Mr. Hawthorne." The photograph became one of the most controversial images in motorsport history. The official inquiry that followed cleared all drivers of direct responsibility. The conclusion was that no single decision caused the disaster. Rather, a combination of factors had created conditions in which catastrophe was almost inevitable. The circuit infrastructure designed for 60 miles per hour cars had never been updated for 170 miles per hour cars. The disc brake technology fitted to Hawthorne's Jaguar, an advance in stopping power that was genuinely significant, had created a speed differential between cars that the drivers behind couldn't anticipate. The earthen embankment that had stood unchanged since 1923 offered no meaningful protection at the speeds and masses involved. The sport had simply outgrown its own safety framework without anyone stopping to notice. The consequences were immediate and global. France canceled its Grand Prix. Germany canceled its Grand Prix. Switzerland, Spain, and Mexico banned motor racing entirely within their borders. In the United States, the AAA, the body that sanctioned American motor racing, withdrew from the sport completely. Dozens of races scheduled for the remainder of 1955 were canceled. Switzerland's ban on circuit racing, put in place in the days after June 11, 1955, was not lifted until 2022. 67 years. Mercedes-Benz withdrew from all motorsport competition at the end of the 1955 season. They did not return to racing until 1989, 34 years later. And then the changes came. Slowly at first, then systematically, then as a permanent transformation of how the sport operated. Barrier technology. The 4-foot earthen embankment that had failed so catastrophically was the beginning of a decades-long process of barrier development. Armco steel barriers, then safer barriers, then the Hans device, then safer foam barriers, each generation building on the lessons of what had failed before. Every barrier innovation in motorsport traces a line back to that embankment at Le Mans in 1955. Spectator protection, the arrangement that had placed 250,000 people in close proximity to cars traveling at 150 miles per hour, separated by minimal infrastructure, was never acceptable again after 1955. The distances between spectators and the racing surface, the barriers between them, the designated safe viewing areas, all of it was reconsidered and rebuilt in the years following the disaster. Car safety, the magnesium alloy body of the 300 SLR, the material that had burned so catastrophically that water made it worse, prompted a complete reassessment of the materials used in racing car construction. Fire suppression systems, fireproof driver suits, fire extinguisher systems built into the cars themselves. All of these developments accelerated significantly after 1955. Pit lane procedure, the sequence of events that began with Hawthorne's pit stop, the decision to pit. The braking, the chain reaction prompted a complete redesign of how pit lanes were arranged and how pit stop signals were communicated. Modern pit lanes, with their pit speed limiters and clearly defined entry and exit procedures, exist because of what happened at lap 35 of the 1955 Le Mans. The race continued. Hawthorne won. The celebration was muted. There was no formal victory ceremony, no band playing. The weather had closed in by Sunday morning, gray and cold over a circuit where, the evening before, 83 people had died. John Fitch never raced at Le Mans again. He spent years afterward advocating for motorsport safety, not from outside the sport, but from within it, as someone who understood what it meant and what it had cost. He became one of the most important voices in the reform of racing safety that followed the disaster. Lance Macklin, whose swerving car had been the immediate trigger for the chain of events, retired from racing before the end of 1955. He said he could never forget the image of the Mercedes somersaulting over him. He lived with the memory of that evening for the rest of his life. Mike Hawthorne won the Formula One World Championship in 1958, the first British world champion in the sport's history. He retired from racing immediately after, citing the deaths of friends and the cumulative weight of what the sport had cost those around him. 4 months later, in January 1959, he was killed in a road accident on the Guildford bypass. He was overtaking a Mercedes in his Jaguar when his car went out of control. He was 29 years old. The 1955 Le Mans disaster did not end motorsport. The sport reformed, rebuilt, and continued. Le Mans itself continued the following year on a reconfigured circuit with improved barriers. The safety improvements that followed, gradual, contested, imperfect, but real, eventually produced the racing environment that exists today, where a driver can survive accidents that would have been certainly fatal in 1955. But 83 people came to a race on a Saturday afternoon in June and didn't go home. They stood in their places along the pit straight and watched cars going faster than anyone had ever seen. And the sport that had invited them there had not made sure the barrier between them and the track was adequate. 4 feet of packed dirt. That was the margin between the crowd and the cars. It wasn't enough. And the sport spent the next 70 years making sure it would never be that margin again. Subscribe for more stories like this. Drop a comment. Do you think motorsport has truly learned the lessons of 1955? Or does the pursuit of speed always carry a cost that the sport hasn't fully reckoned with?